הגומל לחייבים,
הגומל,
חייבים,
say again,
לחייבים
החייבים,
טובות,
טובות,
שגמלני,
say again,
גמלני,
מלני,
כל טוב,
כל
טוב.
טוב.
אמן.
Amen.
לי שגמלך כל טוב, יגמלך כל טוב סלע. I want to bless you with healing and strength. Bless you forever, ever, ever. Always, always, always. And also make the blessings of the Torah for us. Grace, would you share the blessings of the Torah so that Mark can also make the bracha of the Torah?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher hirshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Okay, we put you to work. That was your aerobic work for the day. You're done, okay? Yatzata. Yatzata. You fulfilled your obligation. It's so good to see you, brother. And to hear you even more, maybe. All right, friends, look at some learning together. We're gonna open up. I'm gonna see. Grace will put the source in the chat and also the link for it, because I know we don't like both of those. And I'm going to share my screen here for a second. Thank you, Victor. It's unbelievable. Thank God for Victor. Okay, here we go, everybody. So let's see. Multitasking.
Make it bigger.
Yeah. Waiting for that. Yes.
Send a voice from the heavens.
Okay.
Well, we can always open it directly in Safari.
Okay. This from the remarkable Rabbi Alan Lew. Well, Harley, why don't you read this to us, okay? And source number 1, suddenly you are awakened.
Suddenly you are awakened by a strange noise, a noise that fills the full field of your consciousness and then splits into several jagged strands, shattering that field, shaking you awake. The ram's horn, the shofar, the same instrument that will sound 100 times on Rosh Hashanah, the same sound that filled the world when the Torah was spoken into being on Mount Sinai, is being blown to call you to wakefulness. You awake to confusion. Where are you? Who are you? Then you remember, in exactly 1 month, one revolution of the moon, you will stand before God. What will God see on that day? What will you see? This encounter can carry you significantly closer to the truth of your life. Standing in the light of God, you can see a great deal more than you ordinarily might, but only to the degree that you are already awake, only in proportion to the time and energy you have devoted to preparing for this moment. So it is that in the Motev Moshe proclaimed, every person must prepare himself for 30 days beforehand with repentance and prayer and charity for the day when he will appear in judgment before God on Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, let every person scrutinize their actions with a view to mending them. Let them exclude themselves for 1 hour every day and examine themselves. And Rabbi Chaim David Azulai declared, during Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, one should devote less time to study and more time to fixed periods of introspection and self-evaluation. And the Kav HaYashar recorded that many men in his time observed silence between the advent of Elul and Rosh Hashanah to effect the purification of their souls. The horn blows to usher in Elul, and it is blown every morning on the month of Elul as well, lest we forget and slip back, lest we surrender to the entropic pull of mindlessness. The Torah also stands ready to keep us awake. As we move through the month of Elul, we also move through the book of Deuteronomy and each of the weekly Torah readings, Re'eh, Shoftim, Nitzavim, Kitzatzeh, whisper to us, wake up, wake up. Each of these readings offers a subtle rhyme to the process of awakening to which the month of Elul has called us.
Well done. It's a long one, man.
That's it. Take a breath.
Yeah, take a breath. So here we are. We're a month out. It's Rosh Chodesh Elul. And as Rabbi Alan Lu, Alav Shalom, of blessed memory, wrote, right, the ram's horn begins to sound. We begin to hear the call of the shofar. And it says, wake, wake, wake. As you'll see in a moment, that's taking that from the great Maimonides, right? Maimonides, the great Rambam, who wrote that. And he says that each of the parshiot, each of the portions that are in these 4 weeks of Elul are, like, every Torah portion has some degree of waking up. You know? But especially Re'eh, Shoftim, right? Nitzavim, Kitetse, these 4 parshiot, which are read every year during Elul, have kind of like a focus on waking up, or on some version of connection with the Chagim, with the high holidays. And certainly Re'eh, this morning's Torah reading, begins that process. So let's look at Parshat Re'eh, the beginning of Parshat Re'eh, and the verses, and some of the complexities of the verses that lend themselves to kind of midrashic expansion, midrashic exploration. We'd like to read. Let's get a Hebrew reader. Anybody? Hebrew? In the Zoom Gog? Okay, with David Siegman.
Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Abed.
Re'eh, Anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. Et habracha asher tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem, asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom. V'haklala, im lo tishma'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem, v'sartem min haderech, asher anochi mitzavcha etchem hayom, lalechet acharei Elohim acherim, asher lo yadatem.
To the English too, David. Go ahead.
See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Blessing if you obey the commandments of your God, Yud-He Vav-He, that I enjoin upon you this day. And curse if you do not obey the commandments of your God, Yud-He Vav-He, but turn away from the path that I enjoin upon you this day, and follow other gods whom you have not experienced.
Thank you. Love that translation of Eric Fox, whom you have not experienced. Lo yedatem, not knowing. They translate knowing as experience. So what's happening in these verses? The beginning of this parsha that Alan Lu has said is points in the direction of returning. It begins with this very strange imperative. Re'eh, look. Lirot means to see, right? It has this ocularity, like give a cook, we might say in Yiddish, take a look. Re'eh. It's odd in its grammatical form because Anochi, I placed before you, Lifnechem is in the, not singular, but the plural. Y'all, you all, Lifnechem. It should have said, Re'eh Anochi notein Lifanecha. You all, like, look, I'm placing before you, Lifanecha or Lifanach, like before you, but here it's Lifnechem and all of you. So the look here seems to be, generating a question, a midrashic question about who's being addressed. All of you in the plural, but all of us individually as well. Becomes the midrashic read here, like it's not just Moshe speaking to a group, but Moshe speaking in a very direct way, in a very intimate way to each and every one of us. And then this word that is bolded, this day, Hayom. Hayom, Hayom, Hayom. And Yeah, you can do that, Grace. Just remove that happens to be my otter thing, and it's a mistake. I didn't turn it off. All of my appointments, it sees as a kind of assistant, and it does a transcription. But you can remove my otter. So Hayom here, the day. I mean, often when we say Hayom in Midrashic literature, what day is being? It's either not Yom Kippur, but usually Rosh Hashanah. Right, Hayom Harat Olam, Hayom, right? And we even say Hayom, right? This day. So there's a certain thematic resonance with the high holidays already with Hayom. You'll see in a moment that there's also a way to read this as a very very powerful invitation to today, to every day, Hayom. And one other thing to know before we move on to the next text, and then eventually we'll open up, the text is, vitally signaling the power of choice here, right? So the power of choice here, I'm going to say, okay. Right. So I can't wait to hear your voices here in our open book, but like the choice here is paramount. If you look at the next source number 3, maybe somebody here in the room, Laura, would you like to read number 3 in the English? Sure.
I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life if you and your offspring would live.
Hayidoti b'chem hayom. Again, hayom. This word in like this day, hayom. I call heaven and the aretz, chayim v'amavet, natati l'fanecha. I placed life and death before you. Here it's in the singular, right? L'fanecha. Right here, the English wouldn't pick up on that unless they would start writing y'all, because we don't have really a great, right, second person plural. V'habracha v'haklala. And the blessing and the curse, and now they're made synonymous, right? So what is blessing and curse in Parshat A, our Parsha this morning, later on in the Torah, when Moshe says a similar thing in chapter 30, right? It's right, life and death and blessing and curse, right, are connected. And then Moses says here, instead of just saying, choose the blessings, but you can see from the context that blessings and curses and life and death are parallel with one another. Ubacharta b'chayim. This is one of the most famous 2 words in our tradition, choose life. Ubacharta, and even the grammatical form is, Moshe is not saying to them, please choose life. It's almost,
It's the past tense.
It's the past tense. You will have chosen life. Ubacharta, or it's the continual present. So it's like you will be choosing life. Ubacharta b'chayim. But then he says, Laman, for the sake that you will live, choosing life for life's sake. Ata v'zarecha, you and your children, you and your offspring. Now, this theme with Moshe, and again, my friend Rabbi Sharon Brous, I think might be here today. Let's see. She said something so beautiful. I was listening to one of her sermons last week or the week before, some sermons that I listened to. I listened to Sharon's sermons, and she said, to imagine Moshe as this parent who is on the precipice of saying goodbye to his children. He won't see his children ever again. And he's trying to find a way to exhort them and say, don't forget what I taught you. And I love the way she lays it. Moshe is completely inconsistent, and there are times where he's saying 2 completely opposite things, and right, textual criticism would want us to harmonize them, but she says, just imagine how bludgeoned you are. You're like so out of your mind as you're trying, you say, on the one hand, you're saying you're the best kids. I can't believe the time that has passed, but don't forget, you haven't always been such great kids. And like, it's just this wonderful, mixture of emotions and confusions, and have you say with enough urgency because you know they're going to forget, and you hope that they don't because you don't want them to suffer, and you know that they will suffer and you can't protect them completely because you're not there, and even if you were, you probably can't protect them anyway. And just to read Moshe here, just to bring it, from a more abstract place to a very real place, like the choice is so immense. And Moshe wants so desperately to empower them to trust that they can change and that they can listen and they can choose. And you can hear the urgency of it, right? I'm calling heaven and earth to witness, right? That you can choose, that you do have a choice, right? You have a choice. And it's wonderful to read this and take it slightly out of the cosmic heaviness that sometimes is there, right? There's sometimes an intense cosmic heaviness to our choices. And at the same time, I remember being in the Zen Mountain Monastery and living there for a bit, and there was an evening gatha, there was an evening awakening poem that we read, right? Each of us should strive to awaken, do not squander your life, right? It's the words of Dogen, who said, right, that life and death are of supreme importance. Like each of us has the ability to wake up and look at the way another Moses, not the Moses of the Torah, but Moses Maimonides, whom I mentioned earlier, Moses, the son of Maimon, Maimonides, Rambam. Look at source number 4 and the way that he speaks about the urgency of choice and how he frames choice. Let's go back to the synagogue. Let's see if there's anybody who'd like to read in the Hebrew or in the, maybe get Asher Chaim to read it in the Hebrew. Yeah, Asher Chaim, are you there?
I'm honored.
Okay, so source number
Afal P. Should I translate as I go or someone else?
Asher Chaim also read the English, so both back and forth, okay?
Afal P. Shetkriyat shofar berosh Hashanah gezerat hakatuv. Notwithstanding that the sounding of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a biblical commandment, remez yeshbo, klomar uru yishenim mishnatchem v'nirdamim hakitzu midhar damatchem v'chapesu b'ma'asechem v'chizru b'tshuva v'zichru bora'achem. It carries a symbol. You who are sleeping, wake up from your sleep. You who are slumbering, emerge from your slumber. Examine your acts, turn into teshuvah. Remember your Creator. Elu hashochachim et ha'emet behavlei hazman v'shogim kol shnatam behevel varik asher lo yo'il velo yasil. Those are the people who forget the truth because of the vanities of the times, who err all their years pursuing vanity and idleness, habitu l'nafshotech, which are neither of benefit nor of salvation. Habitu l'nafshotechem, look to your nefesh, to your soul. Vehitivu darkechem, improve your paths, uma'alalechem, and your tendencies. V'azov kol echad mikem darko hara'a umachshavto asher lo tova. Each of you should abandon bad ways and thoughts that are not good. Lefichach tzarich kol adam sheyireh atzmo kol hashana kulah kilu hetzio zakai v'hetzio hayav. Therefore, every human being should look inside all year long as if half of me is innocent and half of me is guilty. And similarly, all of the world, half good, half bad. Doing one bad thing can tip the balance for the individual and therefore for the entire world towards guilt and destruction. Asa mitzvah ahat, harei hichriya et atzmo v'et kol ha'olam kulo l'chaf zechut, v'garam lo v'lahem teshuvah v'hatzalah. If a person does one mitzvah, it's as if that tips the scale personally and for the entire world towards innocence and virtue, creating salvation and refuge Shne'emar, quoting the verse in Proverbs, V'sadik yesod olam. The righteous person is an everlasting foundation, or a pillar of the world. Zeh shesadak hichriya et kol ha'olam lezechut v'hisilo. The person who acted righteously has tilted the balance for the entire world and saved it. Umipnei inyan zeh nahagu kol beit Yisrael harbot b'staka u'ma'asim tovim v'l'asok b'mitzvot mirosh Hashanah v'ad Yom HaKippurim yeter mikol Hashanah. This is why the entire house of God strugglers do more tzedakah and more good actions and get engaged more in the mitzvot from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur, more than the rest of the year. V'nhagu kulam lakum balayla ba'asara yamim eila ulhitpalel b'vatei knesiot b'divrei tahanunim u'chibushim ad she'or hayom. And this explains the custom to rise early during those 10 days for penitential prayers in the synagogue until the break of day.
Asher Chaim, when you read it, it's like, I feel like it's Kriyat Torah when you're reading it. It's like listening to so beautiful. So the words of the Rambam. So just how intense it is for the Rambam, our teacher Maimonides, that Elul, and this is a chidush, something very new that he says, that the reason why we say in Proverbs that it's tzaddik, a righteous person, is Yesod Olam, the axis mundi, is the center pillar of the world. In other words, he holds up the world, she holds up the world, they hold up the world. The reason for that is, he says, it's related to the word that we use to describe them there, it's tzaddik, a righteous person, but he says it's from the word justice, tzedek. That a tzaddik is the one who in their activities each and every day helps to balance the balance between judgment that is for favor and judgment that is for negativity, and balances it towards the direction of positivity. So the Rambam, our second Moses this morning, that Maimonides said reads this period of time from Elul until the end of Yom Kippur as a 40-day period of introspection and waking up and weighing heavily each and every action that we take to see if it will bring something positive to the world or something negative. As simple as that. It's like, okay, at every moment when you're making a choice, whatever those choices are, we make millions of choices each and every day, week, month. Ask yourself if this choice is the choice that will tip the scales in my own life and in the life of the world and towards the positive, should I engage it? Now, that's a heavy, again, it's like a heavy thing, right? But I'm trying to balance the truth between a kind of self-consciousness that makes it impossible to do anything. Like you could be Jain. I'm not saying there's any, God forbid, it's a beautiful religion, Jainism, but it's hard for them to walk in the world because they're afraid to kill bugs, so they have to sweep in front of them. And Judaism is certainly not in the realm of making sure that each and every action is sifted in quite that way, because you would never get up and do anything in your life. But certainly at this point of time in the year, the intense recognition that our actions have consequences and effects is a really profound truth that the Rambam is trying to, in some way, motivate people and not scare them, but motivate them to make choices more skillfully and more mindfully and more selectively. So I wanted to talk about some of the ways. It's hard to hear me, Devora? Okay, sorry, I'll do the best I can. So I'll speak up a little bit more, okay? The truth is that last week or this past week, it sounds like I'm underwater, okay? Let's see if somebody else speaks, somebody else talk and see if the sound is,
Hi, can you hear me? Do I sound
fine? Okay.
well?
Can you hear Eden? Can you guys hear Eden?
I guess the mic
Okay.
is over.
No, the mic is over there, but everybody else is saying that it sounds okay. Network issues. Okay, fine. So people can hear for the most part. Sorry about that. All right. So Yeah. So I was down in, I'm reading a book by this Oliver Berkman about time management. And essentially he said something, I'm sorry that it's garbled, Amy. What can I do? The whole book comes down to something that a chaplain who was speaking to these lay leaders who are lay leaders for the military that I went to train and talk to about resilience. And this chaplain said something really, really succinct, and I think it's very true here, is that when we speak of time management, what we're really talking about is not time management, but choice management. And that choice management, which is obvious to so many of us, but it's just nice to think about. We don't have books on choice management. We have books on time management, which in the end is really choice management. And how you choose to spend your time is a vital expression of your values. And if anything, Elul and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are trying to highlight for us the importance of our choices, right? And to become aware of that. And one of the ways that we get, we suffer in choice management and in choice reflection is spoken to in this beautiful teaching from the Kedushas Levi on the word Hayom, which we spoke about, which is an odd word. It appears in both of the Deuteronomic sources, Hayom, 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 Rosh Hashanah, today, today, today. Let's read this beautiful teaching from Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. And as we're reading it, we're also lifting up the souls of Magid Yitzchak Buxbaum and also Arlene Meyer, and of course, our beloved Evelyn Goodman, who was related to the Kedushas Levi. So who would like to read here? We're back to in the room. Anybody want to read the English? I'll read the Hebrew on the right side. Anybody? Eden? Okay, cool. So let's go back. Okay, Re'ei Anochi, source number 7 now. Re'ei Anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha.
See that I place before you this day blessings.
Lichora tevat hayom eino muvan.
At first glance, there seems no need for the word this day, as we know that God renews his blessings every day, just as he renews the act of creation of the universe by providing bright light to his universe, as this is part of his goodness. People who serve him are aware that they receive new insights daily and learn things they had not known on the previous day. You may therefore understand the word Hayom as every day. As our sages said, God's largesse shall be in your eyes as if something brand new each day.
זהו שכתוב ראה אנוכי נותן לפניכם היום, על דרך שאמרו חכמינו ז"ל היום, בכל יום יהיו בעיניך כחדשים. So, what does the Kedushas Levi say here? What's the problem that Hayom is coming to fix in our choice management system? In other words, if the Rambam and Moses, if the two Moseses this morning are trying to say to us, you have choice management matters, what is this great 18th century Hasidic master, the Berdichever, come to teach us that the word Hayom that Moses used in Deuteronomy is coming to affirm lest we think something else. What might we have thought had it not said Hayom? Yeah, you did.
It feels like if it didn't say today, that you could make the wrong choice and that was it, right? Like that it's finite. Whereas it feels like the British are saying, no, like you have chance after chance after chance. This is an infinite ongoing process. And it's highlighted by Hayom, Hayom, Hayom. The more that we hear that, the more that we know it's not one choice that you make once and you make the wrong choice. It's a choice. So in one way, it's incredibly comforting. And another way, it's like, and you have to keep making the choice over and over and over and over. And you never sort of thought about it. But yeah, I think that's
Yeah, so my friend Anichai once said that we're not the chosen people, we're the choosing people. So it's the choosing people is, and that might just be true for what it means to be human, right? We choose, therefore we are. And choosing is not a one-time, maybe maybe we could have imagined when you had less choice that choosing was a kind of, even if we make choices every day about how to be in the moment, conditions certainly have an impact on the field of choice that we have available to us. And certainly the notion that, before women could support themselves economically, what kind of choice could they have to leave a horrible marriage? None, right? Unless, that's not really choice between life and death in that way, right? So you choose life, even if it means, a lesser form of life. And thank God for the ways that choice is now, right? And being pro-choice means that the field of possibilities means, not just narrowly, but broadly giving human beings more choice. But certainly, when it says Hayom, the B'ditcher says, if you would think that everything today, right, there is no choice. Moses, our teacher, comes along and says, Hayom, right, today. Because today is a new day. Today is God is making things happen. Spirit is allowing things to be different. And for you to do the work, I think we might also say that the B'ditcher now is also predating what we understand about consciousness and about therapy, right? Is it really important for us to do an age regression in order to understand our patterns? Maybe, but we could also see them hayom right now, right? Whatever it was that was the gestalt or the template of trauma or difficulty, whatever it is, that pattern has will be appearing in the present moment for sure, right? We don't have to go very far to see, the truth that wherever you go, there you are, and whatever is now is also telling you a story of then. And so this beautiful hayom in this text is really a profoundly empowering invitation to seeing the choices that are available to us today as part of the story of how we make better choices today than yesterday. So in a moment, I'll take a couple of comments. I'll stop here because I'm going to do one more text, and then, if it's okay with you, let's just hold on to some of the comments so I can, let me see here. I want to see one other, hold on to Hayom, and then I'm going to do one more piece, or two more pieces really of Chassidus, and then we'll open it up completely, okay? And I see that there's a lot of comments here. I'm not sure if people who commented in the chat area are going to want to speak it out loud, but maybe you will. I love two more Hasidic texts, and then I'll open it up completely, okay? So text number 2, Hasidically speaking, okay, on this first verse in the Torah, and it's from the Mea Shilach, from the Rebbe, from the dynasty called Ishbitz. The Ishbitz Rebbe. You see it says, number 6, it says Mea Shilach, that's the name of his book. His name in real life was Mordechai Yosef Lehner of Ishbitz. He was a student of the Kutzker Rebbe before he broke away from the Kutzker Rebbe, Menachem Morgan Stern. And he is also the teacher, right, preceding some of the teachings from Ger, and you'll see in a moment. So he's a really radical thinker. As we discussed in class before, he's a determinist who actually doesn't believe in free will all that much, but anyway, here we go. So let's find another person to read in English from the Zumagog. Zumagogers, anybody? English? Let's get, how about David? I'm sorry, so David, is your hand up to comment or is your hand up to read? The comment, okay, I'm sorry. So Terry.
To read.
Miriam, Margot, can you please read the English?
Of course.
Thank you. Okay.
Blessing and curse, the klala. The use of the conjunction and is used to teach that both blessings and curses, abundance and lack, are from the divine. Human nature is such that when we suffer, we call out to God. But when things go well, we take the credit and forget to give thanks to God. Therefore, the Torah says, Re'eh Anochi, see me, in all of life's fluctuation. Everything comes from me.
Hainu ki hakol hu me'Hashem, ki teva adam liz'ok v'litz'ok l'Hashem b'eit zarato ma'asa lo, ובעת שישפיע לו כל טוב, כך אינו מראות מהשם הוא, ויאמר כוחי ועוצם ידי עשה לי את החייל הזה, על כן מראה השם יתברך Thank you, Margot. So the second inhibition to kind of reflection and choice is sometimes in the verse Re'anochi, we forget to realize that even in the challenges and the things that are quite difficult in our lives, there's something there that we're invited to take a look at. We kind of wait for things often to be really difficult, and then we give up and surrender and so on. We realize that we can't do it all on our own. But then when things are going well, we say we can do it all on our own. We get into this pattern where our choices, choosing the good or choosing that which is not wholesome, is inhibited to some degree by a confusion about how much of our activity belongs to us and how much of our activity is beyond our control, and where we're in a partnership with lovers, with friends, with community. And so Re'anochi comes as a tshuva parsha. Moshe says, remember today to choose blessing and curse, but no, bracha uklala, they come like, if you can learn to see all of these things in your life as potential lessons, right? It'll give you a greater range of choice, and also will give you the humility to know when you don't, when you need help, right? And when you need to reach out and ask for help. And then the third source that I wanted to look at together with you before we open it up is from the Sfat Emet, from the late 19th century, early 20th century Hasidic Rebbe. It's source number 5. The top of it is on the previous page. I'm going to go right to the bottom here, really right there. Need a reader here? Anybody would like to read in the English? Anybody? All right, Stuart, number 5.
My blessed grandfather, the Chidushe Harim, explained our opening verse.
This way.
This way. God has firmly set in the heart of every human the ability to distinguish and choose only blessings. This is the deeper meaning of our daily blessing of the rooster's ability to distinguish between day and night. As the Midrash teaches, God teaches us to choose life, and every divine utterance reminds us to choose blessing over curse, life over death.
So my grandfather Hagid Pirush Re'eh Anochi Noten Lifnechem Shenekba B'chol Ish Yisrael Sheyuchal Lavchin V'libchor Rak B'habracha V'al Zeh Mevarchin B'chol Yom Noten Lasach Levina. Right? V'chein b'midrash HaKadosh Baruch Hu Melamed Lahu B'charta B'chayim B'chol Ma'amar Hashem Nasachein Nitana B'chira Yisrael B'Ma'amar U'B'charta. So it says that it's, behold, I give to you is in the infinitive, like in the continual present. Notain, I am giving to you. Notain Torah, I'm always giving you. Now it doesn't say, behold, I gave you once, right? It says, notain, I'm giving you. I'm giving you today, I'm giving you tomorrow, I'm giving you every day, even though your choice is every day, but I'm also giving you and reminding you and re-establishing in you. The word likibah means to establish. Like I've established in you, thanks to people reading, that you wake up every morning, you say the rooster can distinguish between night and day. I also can distinguish today between blessing and curse. I also today can distinguish. Not only do I have hayom, and not only do I have the ability to know that, you know, challenges are also from God, I need to ask for help, but also that I've chosen the right thing before, and the same spirit that gave me that strength to choose the right way before can also help me now distinguish between bracha and klala, between blessing and curse, between that which will be really skillful and that which will be really unskillful, right? Let's put it that way, right? So we have these 3 beautiful voices, and then I want to finish with Rabbi Lou and then open it up for all of you. Rabbi Lou, as he began, this is the continuation of how he understands these 3, or 4, 10, 20 Hasidic Rebbe's and what they're saying to us in Parshat Re'eh. Look, I put before you this day a blessing and a curse. So begins Parshat Re'eh. We're in source number 8. The weekly Torah portion we read as the month of Elul begins. Pay attention to your life. Every moment in it is profoundly mixed. Every moment contains a blessing and a curse. Everything depends on our seeing our lives with clear eyes, seeing the potential blessing in each moment, as well as the potential curse, choosing the former, forswearing the latter. The will of Hashem is present every moment. Every moment contains the capacity for good and evil, life and death, a blessing and a curse, and everything depends on our choice. Like my mommy said, right? Like Moses is saying, look, I call heaven and earth to witness today. I've set before you Hachaim v'Hamavet, life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore, choose life, ubacharta b'chayim, so that you may live. Moses repeats in the ringing peroration, the book of Deuteronomy, we learn a number of things. We learn that this business of choosing good over evil, life over death, is precisely a matter of life and death. Our lives quite literally depend on it. And we learn that it is a matter of consciousness also. We have to come to see our life very clearly enough so that we can discern the will of God in it, so that we can tell the difference between the blessings and the curses. So these things are arrayed before us as clearly as mountains as we intone their names from the valley in between, that sliver of eternity on which we stand and that we call Hayom, the present moment. Yeah. So we'll open up. We have about 10 or so minutes or a little bit more. We're going to open up for those whose hands are up in the space and in the synagogue and in the synagogue. So we'll start with Daniel, and then we'll go back and forth. Daniel, and then someone from the synagogue, in the space here, and then Nehemiah, and then someone from the space. Go ahead, Daniel Berlin. Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos. What a gorgeous selection of readings and wisdom from Alan Liu and going to the Hasidic Masters. It's just been a great tour today, and I really appreciate it. I had an association to choice management that was not such a great association. It was to Nancy Reagan, whose solution to the drug problem was just say no, as if drug addicts and other people actually had free will to make such a choice. And to me, I think free will may be a little bit overrated as so accessible to us, because one of the things that you often teach about, David, is that our interiority is very multivocal, that there are a lot of inner voices there. And it seems like seeing, Ray, or listening, the Shema, are metaphors for that discernment. And maybe the shofar is that metaphor for the divine voice, Kol Hashem, amongst the small v voices that can sometimes block our access. And certainly people with trauma histories don't have access to that divine voice so simply in the present moment. It requires 40 days of therapy in the synagogue to really get deeper into that discernment. So I'm just putting a plug for multivocality and just what an amazing journey it is to distinguish between the divine voice and those small v voices that may be the curses. And there are parts of us that are really mean and nasty that drive us crazy. So just looking into the complexity of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's a very powerful point. I think that, the acronym that's often used for, that we'll be singing a lot this morning, Ani leDodi v'Dodi li, that I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, which is the verse from Song of Songs, whose first letters, the first letters of each of those 4 words, 4 letters in all, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, Elul, underscores the belief that addiction and many elements of our unwholesome and unskillful maladaptive ways, which were adapted at one point, are rooted in not chemistry, but often they are in chemistry. I'm not denying that on any level, God forbid, but also that at the heart of addiction is also relationship and connection. That there's loneliness and there's capacity to hold that often we don't have or didn't have, and that in the present moment when we have the right resources and we're sufficiently supported, we can feel feelings that we never had and adapt and make new pathways in our heart mind, in our brains. We're neuroplastic, all of us still, believe it or not. So I'm totally available to that. I'm also available to this idea that our tradition says that the last four letters of those four words, that whose first letters are about relationship, the last four letters of the same four words are all yuds. So ani, le dodi, li. All four of them are the numerical value 10, which comes out to the 40-day journey that you're speaking to, right? That it takes, it's not all mem, it's not all, in one fell swoop. It's, taking it in 10 days at a time or one day at a time, whatever it is. And it takes a little bit of tshuva every single day. And I think that choice is on a spectrum. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler wrote a book called Michtav Eliyahu, who was a great Musar personality in the beginning of the 20th century, in the middle of the 20th century. And he wrote a book that was translated to English called Strive for Truth. And in it, he talked about the choice point, what we call the bechira, nikudata bechira, the choice of bechira, of choosing. And he said it's on a spectrum, of course. Even if you're a determinist, let's say like Sam Harris and others who don't believe in free will and who see it very clearly, and if it's a very compelling case, free will is often an illusion, often. And even people like that speak about how, conditions will, of course, determine the choices that we make. And so even if we don't have choice over our own choices, the conditions in which we are in, to some extent, as they shift and change, can actually create a container for more wholesome choosing. And so, I'm in the latter camp. I think that we live our lives as if we do have free choice, and our choices do matter. And I think that we can grow in our capacity to make the right choices slowly, patiently, compassionately, lovingly. And I thank you for that, Daniel. Good point. Multivocality. I have people, I know it's like we want to just jump in and have conversation, but I can't. I have to honor people's hands that were up. So Tony, and then we'll go back to Jill. Go ahead, Tony.
I'll try to be brief. First of all, thank you, Rebbe's past and present, including Rebbe Daniel, Rebbe David, for all this profound richness and wisdom. Huber makes it very clear, at least in his view, that our binary minds want to split it into free will and determinism. And on the narrow ridge, it's both. It's a paradox. It's beyond both. It is both and beyond both. So that's one thing. My own Zen teacher, Albert Lowe, loved the statement of Van Gogh's to his brother, which said, "Something is alive in me. What is it? Something is alive in me. What is it?" And some of our choices are moral, but some of them are aesthetic and as meaningful, ultimately, I think, as moral, which is to say, the way, as I understand it, of Jacob, of Rilke, and of St. Francis is all the way of beauty, the way of apprehending and letting in the beauty, and even the way of Jesus, another Rebbe, in my opinion, says the bird, when he talks about the splendor of the flowers, and the beauty of the birds, he's implying take that beauty into the core of your soul.
So in this, there is in our tradition and in other spiritual traditions the sense the aesthetic and the moral and the true, right? The three great, the beautiful, the true, and the good are actually, they're not split, and the beauty can inform our ethical and moral responsibilities. It also can sometimes be, unfortunately, divorced from it. You can have an orchestra playing, Beethoven in the camps, right? We know that to be true. An aesthetic, worldview can lend itself towards the moral and the ethical, and it also can be divorced from it. And certainly, I think I love the phrase that what you just said is something I'm going to speak about today in our Open Up this morning at about 12 or 11:45 when we do our Torah reading. The end of the Torah reading, we're going to do it. We'll open it up and we're going to look at a text that is something alive is in me. What is that? We're actually going to look at that itself something is undying in me, and what is that? We have 2 minutes, so I'll ask Nehemiah to go ahead and take a minute, and then we'll come back into the room and have one more in the room comment before we go upstairs to David together. Nehemiah?
I made a choice to be awake at this very moment, which I am. I'm at this moment in the bliss between my breaths, and I have a witness, my ears are moving. You can see, and I can't do it voluntarily. It's only when the bliss and my third eye and the Binah and Chokhmah, and we can all make this choice. To have more and more, even not day, nanoseconds of awake whenever we can, and more awake, every day more awake for 40 days. And then come the final day of the 40 days, or I don't know, close to the final, Parashat Shuvah, Shuvah Israel, Ad Hashem, all the way to God, and be more and more moment, and not put a ceiling, and do as much as we can to be more and more awake at this moment now, because we don't know the future. The future doesn't exist. It's only in our mind. So in the 40 is mentioned in our tradition so many times, and so in so many other traditions took it. The mem, the middle, the merkaz. These 40 days are really a great opportunity to become more awake, which I'm calling myself, because today the first step is most important because you create the intention, and I call everybody of my fellow brothers and sisters to be as awake as we can be.
Thank you for that. I think that all of us here in this community, and I think that anyone who is alive to the tradition knows that if you're here today, and if you're in shul, and if you're on the Jewish calendar, and you're today, you know that it's Elul, and you know that Re'eh is Moshe Rabbeinu, and the entire tradition is calling us to be awake as much as possible, and that, as I said this past summer when I was up at Chautauqua and I was giving a sermon about awakening. And Rav Zalman used to say a story that when he went to wake up his daughter in the morning, she said to him, she said, Tata, she said, Abba, Tata, she said, Dad, I know that when I'm sleeping, I can wake up. But when I'm awake, can I wake up even more? And so I just want to say that this wisdom was the wisdom that Rav Zalman would frequently invite us to, and so I want to, here in the Kedushas Levi, and in the Yehuda Lev Alter of Ger, the Ger Rebbe Mordechai Yosef Lehner, Maimonides, in Nehemiah, in Daniel Berlin, and even Daniel Schwab, who just wrote about binaries. I want to hear that the tradition here is not saying that that choices are always clear, or that sometimes choosing, right, the choices are always infinitely obvious and choices are always infinitely possible. I don't hear that at all in these texts at all, but I do hear in them that choices are infinitely impactful and consequential. And that is, I think, in these texts and in other texts that I didn't bring, is both a source of dread, and let's be honest, there's no amount of like Eastern meditation and any non-dual approach that can move us away from the dread of making a choice that you can't, right, that you can't pull back. And anybody that tells me that is spiritually bypassing. I'm sorry. There are choices that I dread making that have consequences that I cannot, right, undo. And that's okay, and that's real. That's what it is to be a human being, to some extent, is to live with that, but to not have it immobilized. And the second piece of that is also that I hear the text saying, though, even if choices are infinitely important, right, there is also a powerful compassion component, which is not all choices. We're not always where we hope to be, and it takes a while. And it's nice to have 40 days to think about and really sit with, like, where and how much change is possible for us in a given arena of our life. How much change management and choice management we might be able to introduce. If we, too much, we'll destabilize. Too little, will immobilize. And so how do we live between those two? And I know that you have something to say, Larry. I know it's very hard, but it's now 9:48. And so I'm gonna actually have to go up and prepare for services. We leave all of you here to schmooze. If you'd like, we also can leave the screen on here if you'd like to do that or not. But we're going to go upstairs, and today's Open Up will explore a fascinating text from David Grossman, a text from the Talmud that we've studied here in the Beit Midrash a couple of times, and also an exercise with the 27th Psalm, which is the Psalm for this month of Elul. So we wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov, and a good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I can't talk.
That's on. It is on. Well, I don't know if you can speak to them.
There's Aleph Rosh Chodesh, but it's Lamed Av. Tomorrow is Aleph Lo.
I could say it's all Greek to me.
They can still hear you.
No, there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh.
Rosh Chodesh is 2 days.
So those of you who want to stay in here and continue the conversation with the people online, you're more than welcome to. And we invite you to, because guys, Tony.
I'm going to take the reins and mute the room so that our room can continue a bit. Bess, yes.
Okay, I'll go now.
This is a Hebrew question. I'm really